A few months back, I put together a video about using it's kind of become a series now of using single-axis gimbals to stabilize the horizon of FPV drone shots. I think the most important thing that people want to see when they're kind of consuming FPV is that high intensity, high action sort of thing. But when you're combining it with the Dutch angles that you get when you fly a drone, in a banked turn, inevitably you lose the horizon, and that's good and bad. Some people want to see that, some people don't want to see that. If you think about like flying a Mavic or a DJI Spark, as it's maneuvering through, the horizon always perfectly stabilized. Ooh, my mouth is cold because it's cold out here. The horizon is always perfectly stabilized on that roll axis, and so I've thought about figuring out, is there a way to build a one-axis gimbal or buy one that you could use to film videos. Initially, the project started out with me using an actual servo.
You what, mate?
Like an old school plain servo, just to kind of hold the gimbal or hold the GoPro and make it stabilize based on input from the flight controller. And we had some mixed success. The next step was to order something called the Quark gimbal. This gimbal is a one-axis gimbal aimed at the action camera market, and it perfectly fits GoPros. So I figured that would potentially be a powerful tool to put on a quad. I came out actually to this spot here and flew a bunch of different patterns to show you how that footage could look stabilized out of the camera. But I was by myself. I didn't have the chance to chase something. So I've brought Winston out today, and now we're going to use the Quark stabilizer to actually film some chase footage. I think that the power of this gimbaled footage is going to allow us to keep horizon stabilization on, but also make really cool maneuvers with the FPV drone that you couldn't do with other ones. So the whole plan of today is to just get this out, chase the drone around with it, swap over to a non-stabilized platform, use horizon stabilizer in Real Steady Go, and kind of show you some of the differences of some of the ideas that we're having with it and why we think that potentially there's a lot of power in stabilizing just one axis, even if the rest is left to its own device. So let's get out there, give it a shot, and I think we're going to enjoy looking at this footage. So the first thing we're going to do is chase the car with the gimbal on the FPV drone, and then we're going to take that off and put the GoPro direct mounted onto the FPV drone so that we can compare the difference in horizon stabilization between having the gimbal and not having the gimbal. And I think what you'll see is you'll get a much nicer, wider field of view that's a lot easier to look at, a lot more fun. You don't have that big crop in. And that's the kind of the goal of chasing the RC car with these two different options. Be sure to subscribe to Nerd FPV, guys! One place where having a stabilized horizon would have been really useful was recently with our Mark Rober shoot. We used horizon stabilizing to do a scenery shot of the Detroit Lions Ford field, and we had the shot where we kind of went up next to the F in Ford and rolled off to the side and dove down to the field level. But what happens when you roll, when you're trying to stabilize for the horizon, is that it has to crop way in. So you see this like big punch in, and then that crop goes away. What this gimbal would solve is that when that roll happens, it's going to keep the horizon level, and it's going to keep that entire field of view of the dramatic, perspective that you're trying to show and drop down to the field. Would have been really useful there. Didn't have it that time, but just to start thinking about how this kind of one-axis gimbal could be useful in day-to-day life. So it was at this point in the day that we were planning on running the GoPro fixed directly to the drone, meaning it's not going to be using the gimbal to stabilize what angle it's looking at. But unfortunately, because we were planning on doing post-processing with real steady, some of the cameras on the GoPro got a little bit messed up, and we didn't really realize that for obvious reasons. Somehow, when it got dropped in the water or in the snow once or something like that, it changed settings to be in linear mode, which means I can't post-stabilize it in real steady. And anyway, it wouldn't have been a fair test anymore at that point, and now Winston's gone, the RC car is gone, and we can't run out and get any tests. However, since we've run this test, I've decided that the RC car isn't dramatic enough of a test to prove the points that we're trying to make here by having the stabilized horizon. And what I mean by that is that when the GoPro is sideways, right, the whole image has to cut in to get the whole frame visible there. And what's happening with that is that you're throwing away information on the side. The gimbal then keeps that level. And when we're chasing the car, we're really only like, just a little bit of angle, so it's only cropping in just a little bit without the gimbal. So I think what we need to do is come back to this project once again and find something a little bit higher speed to chase. I've got some ideas like cars or boats or skiers, potentially an airplane, all sorts of different things. So for now, let me give you a demonstration of what I think is going to happen, and then when we come back to it in a later video, we'll be able to see whether or not that proves to be right. So this is our RC car, this is our GoPro. When we're chasing the RC car, it's not going very fast, and the drone, as a result, to chase it from the side, for example, only has to tilt just a little bit to be able to keep up with it, right? However, a real car or an airplane or something like that is going to be going 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, and as a result, in order for the drone to keep up, it's going to create a much higher angle of attack, right? And that's going to make it have to angle more and more, and you'll see that the real steady here is cropping in more and more just to keep track of that thing in the center. Now, what's happening when we put it on this gimbal is that no matter what angle, so I'm going to try to make this as dramatic as possible, but as we're chasing this at 0 miles an hour, it's keeping it level and stable, which makes sense. But even as we chase it at 45 miles an hour, we're also still level and stable. And that's going to prevent it from having to punch in that real steady frame no matter what angle we're chasing something at. So I know that it doesn't totally make sense that a one-axis gimbal would have that dramatic of effect, but when you're looking for that stabilized horizon look, which, again, not everybody always needs, it's going to help you keep more information available in the frame to be able to use later on. So I hope that that kind of simple example helps demonstrate the whole purpose of playing around with this. And I hope to get back out with something a little bit faster than an RC car to continue demonstrating the power of this tool. I'm not saying everybody should run out and get it, because it's a very, very niche purpose that you would need it for, but as something that I'm continuing to play around with, an idea that I have, I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts on why I wanted to be playing around with this. So I hope that you learned a little bit today about gimbals and filming practice and all these kinds of things. It's been really fun to put this whole video together, and I'm super excited to get back out and film more for you. But in the meantime, thanks for checking it out, and stay flying.